Few are the car companies that have as much sporting tradition and competition heritage as Ferrari, and this is its latest model. It's the F80. It's the F80, and it's one of Ferrari's approximately once-in-a-decade limited-run specials. The GTO, F40, F50, Enzo and LaFerrari precede it, and it's special. I would love to show you underneath this impossibly long, wide and low and incredibly aero-heavy skin all of the technical details that underpin this, €3 million car. Thankfully, I can do exactly that. So here is the F80 in all of its naked glory. Not every single technical component is here, but the main ones that are interesting to showcase are here. Most notably is this carbon fibre tub, which holds the passenger cell. They're all left-hand drive. Most of Ferrari's, I think all of Ferrari's special cars like this have been left-hand drive only. Front and rear, there are aluminium subframes. Difference with this time around is that this upper section is carbon fibre. On the LaFerrari, I think even that was aluminium. But let's start at the front and we'll go through bit by bit, detail by detail through to the back. So we start with the splitter here, which directs some air underneath the car towards the diffuser at the rear, and some it pushes up out of the bonnet here to get more downforce at the front. These aluminium beams here, if you look at this vent that comes through, they direct air all the way through the aluminium chassis rail down to the centre of the carbon ceramic brake discs. Carbon ceramic brake discs have a new material here. They're the same that recently made its debut on the 296 Challenge car. It's a different material to their usual carbon ceramic discs. You might see they have these enormous spring and damper units fitted to them. They're from Multimatic. You might remember that the Puro Sangue SUV was the first Ferrari to have these kinds of damper. They're not exactly the same as these, but they're this kind of damper. They're incredibly complicated, they're incredibly expensive, they're incredibly advanced, and what they help do is they can, instead of having an anti-roll bar, you can extend or reduce the length of the damper unit itself. I can't remember how exactly I get my head around it, it's so complex. They're very clever, they're very trick, they're very good. They really minimise pitch and dive and roll. You could actually change the ride height of the car with them if you really wanted to, but Ferrari does not. Here is an electric front axle. It has 2 electric motors to give this car 4-wheel drive, but I'll mention that again when we come on to the engine at the back. And if you can, crouch down and look at how low the engine in here is. It is set incredibly low in the chassis. So I'm standing there, it comes up, the top of the engine is basically about up to my knee. It is phenomenal. It's a 3-litre V6, but it revs to 9,000 RPM, and Ferrari's intent when they started it was to make 900 horsepower from that alone, and they've done it. So what they wanted to do is drop this engine even lower. So instead of having a flattish motor attached to the back, it has an electric motor attached to the crankshaft down that side in there, which you may be able to see if you just tucked right down and see it. What that means is the engine is a little bit more compact. They can lower it to the ground even further. The distance from the crankshaft centre to the bottom of the sump is 100 millimetres. That means that centre of gravity is again lower. That's a good thing. It drives through a twin clutch transmission. Reverse gear is done by electric motor alone, so there's no reverse gear on the gearbox, which means that you don't have to have an extra ratio, which means everything there is a bit lighter. On the back, we have the same deal as on the front with these 3D printed wishbones. It's quite a complicated thing to do. It's quite time consuming to do. The machine you need to do it is quite big. So for the moment, only these special edition Ferraris will get these 3D printed parts. And this lot here is for the rear wing, which can rise and lower by 200 millimetres. It can go forwards and backwards by 11 degrees each way. It does that on its own. It doesn't do that. You can't control that in the cabin. Combined front and rear, it makes more than a ton. That's about 1,050 kilos of downforce at 250. There are various drive modes available through the Manettino, but also, as with Ferrari's other hybrid cars, there is, you can select sort of the powertrain mode, so you can have it in normal hybrid, you can have it in performance. If you wanted to, you can have it in like a qualifying mode, in which it takes all of the power from this battery, which sits right down behind the passenger cell here, and it would expend all of that energy in one lap. And you go out and set your lap and just go, right, that's the lap. I want you to give me every piece of electrical power you've got in that one lap. Or you can choose a performance mode, which will give lap after lap after lap of performance. But because you've logged the lap in the system, it knows where you're going, it knows when you get back, it knows when it should put power to the electric motor at the back or those motors at the front to give you the optimum performance. This car is all about lap speed. That's the short of it. There are, you might argue, more exciting engines Ferrari makes than a small capacity V6. But it says, well, you could use that. But actually, Ferrari's Le Mans car at the moment is a hybrid system with a small capacity V6. This, the most technologically advanced car it has ever made, should be the same as that. There is an argument to that. Let's see how it stacks up. Right, let me talk you through the interior of the F80 because I think it is worth spending a bit of time chatting about the makeup of this cabin. I sit very low, my feet are raised, and I've got this kind of squared off steering wheel, so it does feel quite racy. Compared to some Ferraris, it is less luxurious, but the material quality, as you might imagine, is still really high grade, bare carbon fibre, stuff like that. It's really, really lovely. It is worth saying that, this may get loud and I'll turn it off again, it does, but I think it's worth showing you. There's no touchscreen in here, it's all buttons. They've got proper buttons on the steering wheel. On the actual production version of this car, the start-stop button will be an aluminium button as opposed to the little haptic ones. It's much better. I'm sitting ever so slightly forward of the passenger. Ferrari talks about having a two-seat cabin with a single seat sort of concept behind it, which is a bit bizarre, but I get it. It's got this thing that ensconces just around me. I've got a proper driver's seat. The passenger sits not exactly on the floor, but on a much less padded, less adjustable seat. They sit slightly behind me, but not anti-socially so. You can turn over your shoulder, you can have a conversation. It's not like a McLaren F1 or a sort of Gordon Murray T50 where you sit a long way behind the driver. But what it does do is it means that we have a bit of elbow and shoulder room each without knocking into each other, and Ferrari can pull the cabin sides in to make it a smaller, thinner cabin, which gives a smaller frontal area, which gives an aerodynamic benefit. And it really does in here feel like you're sitting in some kind of, I don't know, Le Mans prototype, which I suppose is kind of the idea. So welcome to the inside of the F80 for this road drive on a really bumpy stretch of road. But as is the way with Ferraris, you can dial through on the Manettino through drive modes very easily. And then you can also change the damper settings if you want to. Regardless of which mode you're in, you can move the damper setting to a softer one. There are 3 in total. You can't move it to a harder one than the drive mode you're in. So what's it like driving a Le Mans Refugee on the road? Well, it does feel quite a wide car. The cabin is narrower than a standard car cabin, but because there are such broad shoulders, there are enormous mirrors out to the side, which actually give a really decent view out of the back. They've got a wonderful view out the front, a proper little Le Mans prototype kind of view. And then because there is nothing here, there's a bit of luggage space here. That's the only boot there is. I've got one of these mirrors that does a camera to the rear. You can flick it off and have it off if you want, but all I can see is the rear bulkhead, so that becomes pointless. Ferraris tend to ride well. All Ferraris tend to ride pretty well. And these Multimatic dampers are among the trickiest of the dampers and shock units, damper and spring units that Ferrari uses. So even though this is an incredibly track-focused car, I mean, they talk about a lap time of 1 minute 15 something around Fiorano. So even though it's an incredibly focused car, actually it does have a reasonable amount of road compliance. The steering is sort of medium weighted. It's fast, it's sort of 2 turns between locks, but it doesn't feel nervous. It's very accurate, really nicely, consistently weighted. And you don't get a chance to unleash 1200 horsepower, obviously, on the road, especially roads like this. But because there is electrical assistance from the motors, because the turbochargers are electrically spooling turbos rather than just spooling through exhaust gases, their response is immediate. So let's go from 5th gear 35 kilometers an hour. If I put my foot down, I actually get a response. There is not turbo lag, there is not grumbling. The motors pitch in, and you end up with a car that has an incredibly broad power band from basically idle. So let's go and see what it is like on track, and then we'll head out on the road again after we're done with that. I'm trying to sum up what this F80 is really all about. Okie dokie, so I put it in performance mode. That means the car has been round this circuit already, and it kind of knows, it thinks where it should boost the electrical power, so it keeps enough power in its relatively small battery to give you the oomph where it thinks it makes the most difference to you. There is also, of course, a very powerful 3-litre V6 engine making 900 brake. And that is it. It fairly rips around the rev range. I think it sounds better from inside than it does from outside. From outside, the noise is dominated by a sort of aero whoosh. It's brake by wire because it will do some braking through the motors, it will do some braking through the discs. And then as the speed rises, we get up towards the sort of speed. This is 240 kph, which is the sort of speed that it is making more than a ton of downforce, and through that fast corner there you can just sort of feel it. You almost have to take a slight leap of faith with it, because I trust that the aero effect is there. In a slow corner, the torque vectoring they talk about works, so this car turns in a very effective way, and then because it knows where to boost the electric power, it just drives out completely drama-free, completely fuss-free. It pays to wind off the steering as early as you can and be quite precise with it, because this car wants to go sort of in a straight line. It doesn't feel like a sort of hooligan sort of car, if that makes sense. It's very easy to run into the rev limiter if you're incompetent like me, because it just gathers speed so quickly. But just as you come out of the slower speed corners and you come on the gas, the car wants to straighten itself. You can feel the sort of stability systems just kicking in ever so slightly to try and pull the car straight. It wants to go very fast around a lap. And actually, for a car that has been developed in a way sort of alongside the 499p Le Mans winning car, that makes sense. I drove an Audi R8 Le Mans car, the diesel open-topped LMP1 car, a few years ago on circuit, and it wasn't dissimilar in feel in some ways. You've got a drive position you could spend forever in. Actually relatively light steering, an incredibly stable chassis. And it's a car that likes to be driven very precisely, with more finesse than that, as straight a line as possible. Is it exciting? I mean, you would be sliding around more in a much slower car if they'd fitted it with a V12. This fits what they've done. This fits the ethos they have at the moment, which is going endurance racing with a small capacity V6 and lots of electrification. As a technical exercise, it absolutely works. You could stay a long time in it, chipping away at it. So what is, in summary, the F80 like? Mind-blowing on circuit, a surprisingly good road car for a car of its width and its height. It's a really interesting car. I think the easy thing for Ferrari to have done would have been to put a huge V12 in it and just made it really exciting and really loud and really obnoxious. I think quite a lot of customers would have liked that. What it has done is it has taken a technical route. It has decided that because it goes endurance racing with a hybrid, that's what it should do with this car. And it has created a technical masterpiece. And that then is the new F80. Thank you so much for joining me here at Autocar. We are on YouTube every week. We're also at autocar.co.uk all the time, including a full written review of this car with even more technical details. Thanks so much for joining me. See you next time.